narration through the eyes of your character. Um, I think I said before, I don't do a lot of just straight up narration. I don't think you have to set that much of a stage for your readers. I think they'll figure out what's going on if you say she's standing in the kitchen. Of course, you have to describe it once, which is, like I said, one of my fortes of I'm very good at description, and I'm very good at dialogue, and I'm very good at what people are doing while they're talking, that kind of thing. Like if you're, eating around a dinner table, say you're eating, you're gonna eat, and then you're gonna talk, and then you're gonna pick your glass up, and then you're gonna talk, and then you might motion with your fork and point at somebody with it or something like that. You might move your kid's cup out of the way so they don't knock over the milk or the Kool-Aid. They don't need to be drinking no Kool-Aid, but the milk or whatever it is they're drinking, something like that. You have to keep that stuff in mind while you're writing. Like I was telling my son one time, I think I said it before too, that if you pick up a cup, you have to put it back down, that kind of thing. Because people, trust me, romance readers pick it apart. They're just the most, I think, the most intelligent readers in the whole world, and they have read so many books, and they pick through everything, so you have to be really, really careful. um I talked about the different ways. All right, there's a lot of, I talked about repetition. Like I'm reading Anna Karenina. I'd never read it before, Tolstoy, and I'm reading it on my Kindle, and he used the word new, Knew, like 4 or 5 times in one paragraph. It's terrible. I mean, and that's a classic. But, and also too, you have to understand that it's translated, so it's going to sound, but I would think the person doing the translation should probably have tried to use a different word than new. I mean, it makes sense, and I'm known for that too. See, I am one of those. Well, she knew, she saw, she did, and that's one of the things I went back and did a lot of that. She saw, I, she knew. I cut some of that out and just made the statement. It can, whatever the scene is, whatever is going on at the time, um doesn't have to be um described over and over and using the same words, and from the character's point of view. Always there can be a little bit of narration. What I ended up, actually, I'll tell you what I ended up actually taking out of the book. um some of that flashback stuff. I think I talked about that before. Like the person would drift off into, thinking about something else, and all, I call it the bipolar chatter. And it actually came out in the writing because I all of a sudden there'd be this flashback, and I'd be, oh my gosh, and all the way back down. And then what, like the person would be thinking, how you like lose your, you start daydreaming or something like that, and you kind of go into your little trance we're all in 99% of the time. And my characters would go back remembering stuff from heaven only knows. And then when I went back and looked at it, I actually only needed one paragraph of it. It'd be pages and dialogue and flashbacks and stuff like that. But actually, um, one part of the book I really like is, that I actually was working on. I think that might have been it. That I was, yeah, it was it. um the plantation house where my character's lover, her lover from Georgia, inherits pretty much from his father-in-law. um he redoes the whole thing. He makes it, because he's a sophisticated person. These people, like I was talking about with the college thing, there are rich people and there are people with money. Okay, so, and there's a big difference. And the reason he marries this one woman is her father owns the neighboring plantation. And her father was one of those like misers, with plenty of money, 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 but never spent any of it. But what he did spend, he just hoarded it. He didn't use any of the things, you know. And so he had marble statues in his basement. And I don't know if you guys ever seen Citizen Kane, the one scene where all that junk's in his basement, you know, all this, they go to, he's dead and they go through his stuff, you know, to see, you can tell a lot about a person going through their stuff. I mean, if somebody came in here and went through my stuff, number one, they think I'm crazy. But number two, they could probably tell you all about me without looking at a picture of me at all by just going through my makeup. So the reporters were talking about him dying, Citizen Kane dying, and they're in his basement or somewhere where he's got a bunch of stuff stored and it's statues and stuff he had bought and never used. So it was the same thing with my character's father-in-law, the male, my main character's lover in Georgia. So when he took over the plantation after this man dies, he finds all these he finds all these you know, treasures. So he uses these things to fix up the plantation house the way it's supposed to be. You know, he just kind of nests and fixes everything up. He takes all their ugly portraits down. He puts his beautiful family's portraits up. He like banishes his wife's parents to a little house in the back. He just, you know, he just does not want to deal with them. He can barely deal with her. And the funny thing about it is that there's the description of, you know, what the house looks like now, you know, the marble and the glass and the mirrors and the ornate staircases and all the work like that, and the work of some of the people who actually work on the plantation, descriptions of them. Also too, once he gets the house fixed up, and he kind of makes a deal with his wife, you know, and he says, look, you know, you just got to give me a son, and after you give me a son, I won't ever bother you again. Just, you know, just give me a son. Because even he, in a like Thomas Jefferson-esque move, um, he gets a new mistress, and I'll tell you about her. Um, I'll put down here princess, African princess. Um, he editing. He of course he wants his original lover that he grew up with. He wants her back. She's in Missouri, but what he really wants is her back. So the mistake he was doing while he was trying to find another mistress was he was trying to find somebody like her. But him and his father don't really get along. His father don't really get along, and but his father told him, look, the thing to do is get a girl all the way different than her. And I really liked the break that it took, because I actually, there were some things I needed from his point to happen from his point of view, you know. And so I got to write about the plantation back in Georgia, and the things that my character's lover in Georgia goes through to find another mistress, and the things he goes through with his wife. It's just a few pages, but it kind of sets the stage for the uh, slave catchers being sent from Georgia to go to Missouri to get the villain. And I hadn't written anything. Well, the book starts with the fire on the plantation, but I never did get a chance to describe anything about, you know, the plantation, anything like that about it. And until actually the villain comes home, but that's a little bit later in the book. Um, Another interesting little side character that was kind of fun to write was, you know, my main character's lover that she had in Georgia, the man she was, you know, raised with, her very first lover, only one until she had moved to Missouri. But he gets a new mistress. And what I did was, I had her come from Africa, and what had happened, she happens to be an African princess actually, which is historically correct because you would have the chieftain of a clan, the chieftain of a village, holy man and holy women and elders and mothers and grandmothers, what they call older wise women like me, who really is a grandma, um, picking cotton, digging ditches. These people, it'd be like Queen Elizabeth, going down to the Thames and digging, rocks, or, you know, digging coal down one of those Welsh coal mines or something. People were royalty and they ended up, doing the stuff in the field. So she is actually a chieftain's daughter, and there's a coup, and her uncle takes over the village, and he wants to get rid of her, pretty much. He wants to get rid of anybody that could possibly be a contender for the throne or in power. But because she's a woman, so um, but he's still so intimidated by the family and so intimidated by what's going on that he decides that he wants to get rid of her. And a lot of slaves were actually sold by their own people. I mean, white men came over, kidnapped some of them, like you saw Roots. They actually did that. But there also was times when the chieftain or of a village or somebody like, somebody like that you know, would sell you, would sell you. Of course, they had no idea, I'm pretty sure, what was um what was going to happen to most of these people. But she lucks out. I write a little bit about her being on the slave ship. She's not chained with the other slaves. She's not, because she is afforded that dignity. She has like a little cabin, and it's another girl there with her that they were taken to America for the same thing. Because of course they went over there and got beautiful women to be, mistresses of these, men, or they would get very healthy young women to, to breed more slaves, make more property. So she happens to be an African princess. She, in her mind, I thought, now, what would she think was going on? What would she, how would she perceive what was going on? And what she perceives is, which I really think this is really good. What she perceives is that she's being bought as a wife, because that wasn't in her culture, that wasn't very rare. You could buy a wife, go get her, just go buy her, and he um she thinks that he's buying her as a wife. She thinks she's his wife. She calls him the Golden King. She thinks his house is a village. I mean, it's just to come from her point of view of what she thinks is going on and what we know is going on. That's another vehicle. The character thinks one thing and we know different. And because she's going to be his mistress, she's treated, like a princess. And so she thinks that's what's going on. I think it's kind of funny. It's kind of neat and it's kind of funny, but it also gives her a certain vulnerability. And she ends up having, she ends up getting pregnant by, him. And she thinks to herself that, well, I can't leave him now. I can never leave him now. And plus, she thinks he's ugly. She's like, he's very nice. He's just so ugly. She can't get used to the fact that he's so pale and that yellow hair, and she don't like it. His eyes don't have no color. She just thinks he's the ugliest thing she's ever seen in her life. But he's so kind, and sweet, and to her. And she says, he seems to be a very good chief. He's very kind to his people. He takes care of his people, because the slaves on um, Fairlands, that's the name of the plantation that my main character's Georgia Lover, that's the name of the plantation that he inherits. And before he took over the reins of power, it was just like most, I mean, like you see Gone with the Wind, these people dressed in all these nice clothes, and and they're getting off work at 3 o'clock, and they go back to their little cabins. And, it was most of the time it was not like that. These people barely survived. They barely had enough food to eat. The No medical care besides what the witch woman or something, or the women in the they had no um they weren't prancing around in beautiful head rags and stuff like that. It just wasn't like that. They barely survived. They were given just enough to barely survive. And then the breeding uh farms were even worse. I mean, you think we think about now, we want to cry when we hear about those puppy mills, but it was pretty much the same thing. So she isn't um exposed to any of that, but it also makes it this. Oh, when she realizes that she's pregnant by him, she realizes then she's stuck with him now. She's stuck with him now. And the funny thing about it is she thinks she's his wife, and the white woman that he's married to, she just thinks that she's the prima. She's the first, that the white woman is the first wife, and that she's his second wife. And to her, it's an insult because she's a princess, and she's like, "Hey, I'm the one that should be, the first wife," but she doesn't understand the dynamics of what's going on. I think that's very interesting. And I actually took a lot of pages and took a little bit leap of faith, putting that stuff in just to show the different dynamics. And she says, well, if I have a son, um, he'll have to go back to Africa when he gets grown and uh, take back our land, take back the village, go back and put our family back in power. And she's thinking if she has a daughter, well, her daughter can't get a match in Africa because, of her mixed blood. So she figures that he would, have to, would dower, but, the prettier the girl, the lower the dowry, that kind of thing. And it's very funny, some of her observations about, like I said, I think I said before, well, I know I've said before, I say all the time, that you don't get a lot of historical romance from a Black woman's point of view. Um, so okay, yeah. And when she just realizes that, and I took that she's not going to leave him, that this is like a permanent thing. And what ends up happening is the woman that he married, his actual wife, the white woman he marries, dies in childbirth. And so basically he gets his son because his black mistress has a daughter. I started to switch it around, have her have the son, and his wife to give him a daughter. But I thought if I do that, then he'll have to marry again because he'll have to have a son. He has to have a white son to um, inherit, the plantation. And so I thought, no, I kind of want them to kind of live kind of happily ever after. And one of the decisions he comes to, which shows a lot about his character, and that's something else you can show a lot of. You don't have to say, hey, he's a good guy, you don't have to say that out loud. You can simply describe the things he does. And one of the things he does is he thought it was a mistake. His first mistress, the main character, when he was raised with, was taught to read and write. She learned how to read and write. He felt that that was a mistake, and that's how she had the nerve and had the courage, and everything, and could leave him because she could make up her own mind and she had her own thoughts. And another problem he has with his new mistress is she doesn't speak English, of course. I mean, she's learning, but she doesn't know. And that's kind of some of the cute things between them, that she's teaching him her language and he's trying to teach her English. And a decision he makes, let me hurry up before my timer's out, is that he made the decision he was not going to teach her to read and write because he didn't want to, but because he was afraid he'd lose her because he's really getting fond of her. But after he has his children, after she has his child, while she's pregnant with his child, he decides that she cannot be helpless out here in the world. If something happened to him, she could not possibly be left so she can't, read and write and these kind of things. So he doesn't want to leave her that vulnerable. So he ends up deciding he's going to teach her to read and write. So I am heading out because I want to change clothes and do a little bit more. So see you guys.